means the world to me, you know.
That finish was sensational.
Finally puts it all together.
She's won six grade ones this year, right? 6 grade one, Breeders' Cup winner.
Can I tell you one of my favorite movies of the 80s, 1986, Stand By Me?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a pivotal scene where these friends hike off into the forest. I won't give everything away. But they have a campfire that night. And around the campfire, they start talking about different topics.
Okay.
Right? So it's like, if I could eat one flavor Pez the rest of my life, it'd be cherry Pez. And then they just move on to different topics. So I wanted, in the same vein, to talk about the year that was in horse racing, 2024, around a fire at one of our favorite racetracks anywhere in the world, Del Mar. And so I look back at those 14 championship races, and my favorite story and favorite moment was Soul of an Angel and the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint. It was August of 2018. Do you remember what riding accomplishment happened here at Del Mar?
Yes, because Scott and I reported on it.
Okay, what happened?
Drayden Van Dyke won 6 races here.
Seven, tied an all-time record.
Yeah.
You go from 2018 winning 7 races during the Del Mar Summer Meet in one day to Christina, he couldn't get 7 mounts in 1 week, and he had to move to Florida.
He did, and someone who, has had a difficult family life himself. He's had a lot of loss. He's had to deal with quite a bit as a young person, and all the success that comes at a young age, I think, can make that a little bit difficult to take it all in stride as well. And Saffie Joseph was a huge part of the reason that his career was reignited, let alone the Breeders' Cup, but really just to get back to having some confidence in himself and wanting to be out there riding.
Yeah, I think he had a few people behind the scenes that made that connection to Saffie Joseph, and I think, I don't think he had another option at that point. His career was just stale and stagnant. He took some time off. He talked about his mental issues with you quite a bit openly, and I don't think that it was kind of a last resort thing. We got to do something here to shake it up, and he went to South Florida and it turned
Saffie
around.
met Drayden's father years ago, and I think they had a bit of a connection, and so I think there was something in him that felt like, in honoring his dad's memory, he wanted to reach out and try to help, and he certainly did.
And I've always been a big Drayden fan, and I think he's got all the talent in the world. He was a leading rider here in 2018.
Right.
Both meets. But you take him out of the story, you take him away from it. That was one of the most visually impressive Breeders' Cup races of all time. Soul of an Angel in a sprint, in a one-turn affair, and you look at her on the backstretch, she's 1,000 lengths back. She is dead last to the point where they have the camera zoomed out as far as it can go. I don't even know how many lengths she's spotting. And she swoops by, she passes every horse in the field down the stretch. And if you look at the horses that finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, they were 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th at every other point of ball. So it wasn't the race falling apart. It was just that horse flying by everybody like they're standing still at the highest level of competition.
Scott, this 2024 Breeders' Cup, the schedule is a little unusual. We had a lot of important races after the Classic.
Yep.
It's one of those races that you like the best.
More than looks, man. He was awesome. He was awesome. And I think you're the one who said this here in recent weeks. It might have been before the Breeders' Cup. It could have been after. But we keep talking about Cherie DeVoe. She's on the ascend. She's an up-and-comer. You said she's arrived.
She's here.
I mean, she's here. She's arrived. We've seen it with her wins at Keeneland, and obviously with this Breeders' Cup win, and a horse that, we thought for the longest time was a grade 1 caliber, and he ran a big race with a slow pace at Keeneland in the fall. He gets that fast pace, and he blows by a Guineas winner in Notable Speech, who was awesome in his run, and denies Charlie Appleby yet another Breeders' Cup mile.
It was the best Breeders' Cup moment for me because it kind of full circle. It goes back to what you were saying. The sprint provides first-time trainers with Breeders' Cup wins very often. This was the first win for Cherie DeVoe. I thought in a division that historically going in, you always think, oh, America's not going to win it, right? They don't have a chance. At best, they're on 2nd or 3rd. We ran 1-2. And I've seen a progression. Yeah, everyone says Cherie DeVoe has arrived, but the first couple of years, she didn't have a big stable. She's grown, and it's got exponential. And I think the other thing that ties into me, which is my favorite moment of the year, is the breakfast shows. And that horse, she touted that horse. If you paid attention to that morning show, she pretty much told you the horse was going to win. And that's from a trainer that, she offers opinion, but she gave the push.
How confident are you in him?
Very, very confident.
We have those pinnacle moments. Every year there's one moment, whatever it may be, that kind of shines. in the Breeders' Cup breakfast shows, and I think we had a few this year.
Yeah, it was Scott dressing up as Michael.
Michael
Yeah,
Ivory,
yes.
You topped like towards the end of the whole run
Right,
of shows. You topped everything we did.
Between that and Mike buying a jacket off the Japanese train.
That was good. Oh, our
no.
drone just shot it. So we're going to carry on the drone and just ended up in the tree. We got to get a camera on there. Our drone just ended up in the tree.
We'll pick it up next year.
Yes.
Oh no.
Okay, so those two moments
Can we
were
go
great
back to the
comedic
jacket
relief.
story, though?
But
How did
let's
you-
start with the
how
jacket
did this
story
come up?
because the jacket story came early.
Because it's the sweetest jacket you've ever seen. Okay, last question. How much do I have to pay you to get that jacket off your back?
このジャケットはいくらで私は買うこと
He had won 2 Breeders' Cup races
Right.
last time they were at Del Mar, and the jacket had both of the winners on there. Marsh Lorraine and
The other one.
Not
Love's
Forever Young. Love's Only You.
Love's Only You.
Love's Only You. So it had Love's Only You and Marsh Lorraine on it. But it's got that
It's like the 90s starter jackets that were
with
so
the
colorful.
it was somewhere between a starter jacket in color and then a members only jacket in construction, and it had like just that ornate like graphic design that you will only see in Japan, right?
Right.
It was just it was
いくら
fantastic.
で私は買うことができますか
150.
150
I got this. I got this. I'll be wearing that jacket in a minute, Todd.
How much do you think he understood of what you were saying outside of the interpreter? Do you think he knew?
1,000%.
Oh, when he
okay.
replied in English, 150.
Yeah. He absolutely knew what I was saying. He absolutely knew. I'm sure they were just talking about what a moron I was back in Japanese. But here's the thing. He didn't pull that number out of a hat. Somebody went online on Twitter and followed it up. You can buy those for $150 online. So he didn't lose any money on the jacket. I just overpaid for a used one.
That was truly one of my favorite moments, and I think our audience too. And then you actually took it to another level on the last show, Halloween morning. So
When
how
did you
this
come up with it?
Yeah.
It wasn't
Michael
my
Ivory.
idea.
Happy Halloween. Michael Ivorone checking in for Scott Hazelton. He'll join the show a little bit later on today as we get.
There are very few people on the planet that it's impossible for me to say no to.
Right.
And it's Anna. She texts me, she says, make sure you bring a sport coat. I said, for what? Or she might have called. So I call her, so what do I need a sport coat? She goes, you're doing the Ivorone thing. Next thing I know, we're in the trailer and they're asking me to take my shirt off and they're naring me. And not
Taking
just
your
naring
chest
me,
hair
but just a V. So they've got that's going on for 10 minutes, and it's like, I don't know, we're 20 minutes to airtime.
Spray tan.
Yeah, and then they put the spray tan
Yeah.
on and the makeup and stuff like that to add to that. And the reaction that I got, it was
great.
like 10 minutes that we
So
did that.
great.
It was
Is it very glittery?
It is very glittery.
It is.
Also, there's signs that it's very cold.
How did he react to the whole thing?
he texted me, he's just how he loved it. People were sending him messages, are you seeing this, and all that stuff. And, you know, what's the saying? The biggest compliment is flattery, or
Yeah.
best form.
Imitation is the best.
Imitation
Yeah.
is a-
Do you think
yeah.
he's got a kind of an alter ego going on
I
outside
know
of
there
work?
is. There's
Come on.
something
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on there.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
glad
something
you
going
showed
on.
it to our
I was out of my
audience.
comfort. I was
Yeah.
out of my comfort zone,
Well,
but I embraced
You
it.
look very comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
You look really comfortable.
That post-Nair chest was very comfortable.
Let's have some fun. Let's make some money, babes.
You have some great memories here at Del Mar.
All my best memories are here.
Okay, so what happened at the Breeders' Cup on those list of memories? So when we look back at the Breeders' Cup being held here in 2024, best moments, your answer is easy, straight no chaser. So all those memories that you have from a kid to now being an adult, a mom, and your husband winning the Breeders' Cup Sprint, where does that rank?
Yeah, I
memories at
mean,
Del Mar?
it's right at the top, and I think the culmination of all of the hard work that Dan put in and has put in, and so many horsemen have, is what made it so special. And I say all the time, what I love about what we do is watching people win. Watching horsemen win, watching the grooms, watching the assistants, watching the owners. And until they turn for home in the Breeders' Cup Sprint this year, I have a certain way of cheering. I always cheer for the jockey because my dad was a jockey. And it wasn't until that second I realized how bad I wanted it to. It was like a cheer of desperation for the wire. And it was very surreal. And I think looking back on it, what I find the most special is understanding there were 6 trainers that won their very first Breeders' Cup this year. Kenny McPeek was one of them. I took that for granted. I had no idea that Kenny McPeek hadn't won a Breeders' Cup yet. And I think that underscores how difficult it is and how special it is and how unique it is to be a part of that club.
When you look back at the remotes we did in 2024, is there one that stands out, Scott?
Well, I'd say the Churchill remote and going back there for the Derby and
Yeah.
having the footprint that we did at the Kentucky Derby and at Churchill Downs, and obviously over the course of the meets as well. But being back there and being there that week, and having the access and bringing the access to people, because that's what it's about, right? I mean, the hours spent on those horses and those stories and those connections is pretty remarkable.
I want to echo that too, because the Derby, it is such a colossal amount of work. And I did none of it because I flew in Wednesday night. And everyone had been there for like a week. So it was, for me, it was fantastic.
Yeah, and you were in a good mood and you were happy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and you guys were all like,
everyone's like, oh, Michael's here. Thanks, Michael.
So
guys,
I'm like,
let's do this
hey,
idea.
it's
We're
the
tired.
Derby.
I appreciate
smoke
it.
a cigar.
Watching from the studio, it was good. You
Well,
guys did great.
Christina, Scott was touching on that point, though. There's the stories along the way that get you to Kentucky Derby Day. So it's all those prep races that we get to cover. And it was, in the end, it was quite a story that Ken McPeek would win both the Oaks and win both the Derby, and Brian Hernandez right there with him.
Yeah, that was a big part of it for me. It was my first Derby. I've never seen the Derby
Really?
with my own eyes at Churchill Downs.
Wow.
So it will always be a memorable one for me. And then in looking at the participants in Brian Hernandez Jr., who I think we've all talked about him for the last, decade as one of the most underrated riders in the country. Kenny McPeek, with everything he's done this year with Thorpedo Anna and the way he's represented racing in the mainstream and the way he's brought new fans into the game because of her. And that was still kind of the early portions of her journey. So to be at the Derby in general was a thrill and a highlight for me this year. But to watch two guys who are such a great team day in, day out, really working blue collar types. Brian's there galloping these horses in the morning. He's not just showing up for the first Saturday in May. That was really special to watch them both, and to watch Brian do in his own style, saving ground, riding along the inside. I mean, that's the move that he is famous for every single week at Churchill, and to see it on the biggest stage was special.
And so it starts, obviously, at the Kentucky Derby with Simon. We went to Baltimore, and we were reminded that Dwayne Lucas is still great.
Unbelievable. that was the highlight of the year for me, outside of, obviously the Oaks Derby double for McPeek. But I think, if you were to poll, I think the general public over the last 40 years and give me two names in horse racing, Wayne Lucas and Bob Baffert would probably be the two names that would come to mind. And it's remarkable to think that Wayne Lucas had his first classic win 44 years earlier in the Preakness with Koditz, 1980. Wow. And he's hanging around 44 years later and takes it down.
In the interest of journalistic integrity, I'll just say it for all of us, and if you want to interrupt me, you can, but it's hard not to root for the people that we cover on a daily basis when you get to know their stories. So we're talking about Drayden Van Dyke and the Breeders' Cup. But during the summer, Kyle Frey is a guy that you have come to respect immensely. You interviewed him many times. You understand the struggles that he has had. That moment in the FanDuel Pacific Classic is the highlight of the summer for sure at Del Mar.
Well, it's a story that started the year before with Kyle. He is an Eclipse Award-winning apprentice, and he has very publicly struggled with substance abuse. He's put it out there. He doesn't hide from it. He is in recovery, and like all people of that ilk, he will be in recovery for the rest of his life. But he's a guy that's always had the right intentions and the right MO, but it doesn't mean it's not a struggle. And last summer, it wasn't a relapse situation. It wasn't like that typical, storybook kind of thing. It was a mental health issue. And he had to look internally and say, something here isn't working, and I need to fix it. And it needs to be fixed now. And he took off the most important meet of the summer. He took off Del Mar last year. And that is career suicide. If you're going to miss this 7 weeks, you're taking yourself off the biggest mounts and the biggest prospects, because this is where the 2-year-olds hit the ground. This is the big races that they're going to. So you're not just losing your mounts for the summer. You're losing your mounts for the spring and the fall and the next year and the Triple Crown Trail. It is a horrible thing to do to your career, but it was the best thing he did for his career, because when he came back, he had dealt with the mental health issues. He spoke very publicly about it at the racing symposium, and he got back to that place where he was riding as well as he is. And the best part about it was when he won with Mixto. I won't say who, because I don't want to give it up. But somebody from the Team O'Neill, from Doug O'Neill's camp, comes down the stairs. I was like, that was amazing. And he looked at me and goes, he wasn't supposed to win. He's like, he was just out there to set the pace. Like, he wasn't supposed to win. But Mixto and Kyle had other plans, and he rode that race impeccably well, and it was easily a career. And he won two great stakes that day, because he won the turf race with Gold Phoenix prior to that as well.
So we are here at the summer meet. We're on the Triple Crown Trail. We're at the Triple Crown. Overall, with the Breeders' Cup year end, A lot of races to think of. Christina, what was your favorite performance of the year?
Oh, I think the race of the year was the Travers. We were very busy, we were here, but I remember exactly where I was watching it. I was sitting next to Gabby in the production trailer, and we were both screaming our lungs out for Thorpedo Anna. But I think that's what makes the race so special. I think it's one of those races that you remember where you were when you watched her run in the Travers. And even though she ran second behind Fierceness, it was a career-defining moment for her. It was an ambitious, event for Kenny McPeek. He knew what he was doing. He could have run in the Alabama in a 4-horse field against a few others, and she could have run circles. But he knew that to really set her apart, it was going to take entering in a race like that, taking on the boys, and to try and make her one of the greats. And as we talk about, Eclipse Awards and looking forward, it's not always about the wins. Sometimes those second place finishes, when you step outside the box, can be what really sets a horse apart. And I think what Thorpedo Anna did for racing, and the way that they built it up, and everybody wear pink, and it took over the whole town. I know we weren't personally there, but it was the race of the year.
I agree with that. And to your point about defeats sometimes are better than wins, that kind of mimicked Zenyatta finishing second to Blame. It was that type of feel. I know she was her only defeat, but I thought it was one of her best races. And I thought that the Travis was outstanding. I mean, and especially as the year went on, Fierceness, Thorpedo Anna, Sierra Leone, how that form held up Breeders' Cup Day. I know she went back to her own sex group at that in the distaff and won, in Sierra Leone. But it was an outstanding race. Honorable mention. I know I'm going to go way out of the box here, but I would give it to Senor Buscador in the Saudi Cup only because a guy like it's not a race of the year. It's more of a moment for me. For a guy like Todd Fincher. Yeah. Literally running around New Mexico, and now all of a sudden he's on one of the biggest stages in the world, $10 million, $12 million race. I mean, $20 million, thank you. Yes, he made $12 million this year, Senor Buscador, with that one win. So I thought that was a special moment for him personally. Like when I watched that race live, and I thought how special that was for him,
I think that was a great moment. For me, I usually don't go this route. I'm going to go very Captain Obvious on the race of the year. It was the Kentucky Derby. That finish was sensational. You want to talk about the form holding up? Yeah. Forever Young, Sierra Leone would come back to win the Classic. Mystic Dan, it was a magical moment and a brilliant ride. He hasn't quite had that moment yet again. We shall see. Hopefully he comes out here to California to run in the Malibu. But it was, the McPeek and Brian Hernandez Jr. story. It was Sierra Leone who finally got his day in the sun in the Breeders' Cup Classic, where he was the king of the mountain. And then Forever Young, it was amazing that the Japanese horses had so little success at the Breeders' Cup, because I felt like they were coming into the Breeders' Cup with so much fanfare. And I do think there's an argument to be made that the best horses in the world reside in Japan. Their racing is excellent. They have been breeding a different kind of animal. They've been breeding sturdy, fast animals that are built to race, not built to breed. And I think that is a huge difference for what their focus is and what their goals are. And I think that, Forever Young having that showing in the Derby was great. I think it was, that close from winning, and I just think
in the Classic.
And he ran huge in the Classic as well. And I just feel like that Derby was such a great race, and it was not that it was the closest finish we'd seen in the Derby in 40 years or whatever, but it was the closest finish between three horses.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like any one of those three could have won. It was fantastic.
And we didn't even get the story of Tyler Gaffleone and being taken off Sierra Leone, who eventually would go on to win the Classic with Flavio Prat aboard, which is going to help propel him to an Eclipse Award. But Scott, you probably have the best perspective because you really actually travel more than any of us. You even travel internationally. You're at Royal Ascot. So was it hard for you to pick your favorite race of the year?
It is hard to look back and recap exactly what we've done because of the time that we spend on the road. But I mean, I'm with Christina. I think it's Thorpedo Anna, and I think, and her run in the Travers and being defeated. And the crazy thing about the story about Thorpedo Anna, that I don't know how often it's been talked about, but you think back to when she first broke her maiden at Keeneland in a maiden auction restricted race. It was shortly thereafter. Her owners were offered a 7-figure sum, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. A lot of money for a filly that they bought for $45,000. And for them to roll the dice there and take that ultimate gamble to turn down that kind of money, and the way that it panned out for them, I mean, you had to have some, to be able to, to be able to turn that.
Plums.
I believe Andy calls them testicles.
Yes.
Or
to turn that money down. I mean,
or you got a lot of dollars where you can turn it down. Every one of us would have taken it.
So, and this isn't fair to compare other eras, But the horse that is always looming over the most ambitious 3-year-old filly campaign will be Rachel Alexander.
Right.
Not that Ken McPeek takes his cues from history. He takes chances. He put Swiss Skydiver in the Preakness against the boys. Did this rise to the level of Rachel Alexander, or is she still the gold standard for most impressive 3-year-old filly season?
I mean, her Woodward, that was
beating the boys, yeah, at the end of the year.
That was
and
incredible.
along the way
Oaks
beating the Preakness.
And her Oaks was ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean,
19 and 3/4 lengths, I think.
She was. I
All-time
remember standing
record?
in the tunnel at Churchill and was right there, and I saw her go by, and I'm like, I'm waiting, and where the hell are the rest of these horses? And I looked down, and it seemed like they were at the top of the stretch. That's the single most visually impressive race outside of seeing Flightline here. Those are the two.
Right.
Because I was over here on the first turn. I managed to find a spot where there wasn't many people, and watching him do that, those two races, seeing them with my own eyes out on the track and not from a monitor on a set or things of that nature, those are the two singularly most impressive performances I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think Rachel Alexander has given permission to trainers to take more shots. When you look back at that incredible campaign, and Thorpedo Anna got very close to that level, talking about Eclipse Awards.
Right.
So before we get to Horse of the Year, where Thorpedo Anna is clearly a contender, 3-year-old males. You mentioned the Derby was great, but then you have Sierra Leone, who doesn't win on that day, who comes back and wins the Classic. Where are we at here for best 3-year-old?
He's the most consistent without winning very often, right? But he won on the day where champions are crowned.
Right.
I mean, in February, he was the horse. Wasn't he the talking
Yeah,
horse?
he was. You're right.
He was the
You're
horse that everybody loved down at the fairgrounds. He was going to win the Derby and everything. I've got to be honest, I don't think he's an easy horse to train. You know, he was lugging in. I thought Chad Brown did a tremendous job with him. I thought, the way he managed him and to get him from the Travis to the Classic, what he did, I think he gets it. I really do.
I think so too, and I think you look, obviously, the Breeders' Cup Classic. He won the Bluegrass. Fierceness won the Florida Derby. And even though Sierra Leone didn't win the Kentucky Derby, he ran very well in the Derby and he beat Fierceness. And I think that comes into play when you're starting to talk about the votes as you're comparing those two.
So how the 3-year-old category, is that how the trainer category will go? Like if they give it to Sierra Leone and Chad Brown in the 3-year-old male category, could we see then Chad Brown winning trainer of the year? Or if we see Ken McPeek collect with Thorpedo Anna and Horse of the Year, I mean, you would think he'd be trainer.
People will give it to McPeek because of what he did with the Oaks and the Derby.
Yeah, hadn't happened in 72 years.
I mean, it is tremendous what he did. And the access he gave us at the Preakness in the barn area. We're talking about an hour before post time of the Preakness. That's like walking into a locker room of a Super Bowl and trying to interview a coach in front of his players. It just doesn't happen. And he granted that.
You think about where he started with Thorpedo Anna, with Mystic Dan, and globally I think the Breeders' Cup is very well known, but in the U.S. it's all about the Derby, and it's the Oaks and the Derby. And to win the Oaks, the Derby, and a Breeders' Cup race with horses that were $40,000, $50,000, I mean, that's remarkable what he did this year and what he's continuing to do with those horses.
Well, and he's still doing it too, because it was at the September sale and I ran into him and said, "Oh, have you bought any?" He says, "No, I book 1, 2, that's not me. I used to be a book 7 guy when we had book 7 at the September sale at Keeneland." He goes, I'm waiting, and he goes and he buys those horses.
But these guys
20,
that do
50,
that,
150,000.
200 is his map. But these guys, if he went and bought a $2 million yearling, it probably it's like he says, it's not.
But he'd rather have 10 of them, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
And he's still getting results. I mean, they're not all going to turn out to be Thorpedo Anna or Mystic Dan or some of the other Rattle and Roll, the horses that he's had, but he still does well with it. They're winning races. They're making money, and he finds the ones that are the best of that, and they turn out to be these grade 1 type
I mean,
horses.
to your point, we got people that own countries that haven't won the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, that's right.
This guy's winning them a $40,000 yearling.
And a vote for Kenny McPeek doesn't take away from the appreciation of what Chad Brown did.
Right.
And the grade 1s and the money 1 and the horses that he's campaigned and how well he's done it. And the job he's done with Sierra Leone as well. But this unique achievement for Kenny McPeek this year, I think really sets him apart.
Okay, so the big prize is obviously Horse of the Year. Let's not get into who's voting, who can vote, who can't vote. Just show of hands. Is Thorpedo Anna Horse of the Year? Would you vote for her?
No doubt. I don't even know why there's an argument against this.
Oh, really?
We've talked about, there have been people who have talked about it saying, oh, I don't know, it might be controversial. We heard that mentioned today. I don't understand, like, if it's not her.
Who is it?
Who is it? There isn't another horse.
Well, Mike
that is-
Rapoli has a case for fierceness, he claims, because they beat her in the Travers. That he ran a better race up against the pace.
But
of
she's
the
won
Breeders' Cup.
six grade 1s
Yeah.
this year,
It is, yeah.
right? 6 grade 1s, Breeders' Cup winner. I mean, I don't see how she's not a landslide type
Are you
of horse
as
of the year.
bullish on her? Horse of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, she beat Sierra Leone, who's going to be who's the classic winner, is going to probably win the 3-year-old. She lost to fierceness in the Travers, but I mean, they were right there. Like you say, in defeat, she franks her form against the opposite sex, which is huge. And I feel like if she hadn't run in the distaff and they ran her in the Classic, I don't know if she wins, but she would have been right there.
And it's also, too, that, that this has been brought up. I think it was brought up the year that Zenyatta lost the Classic. She was Horse of the Year, but the year before when she won the Classic,
Right.
she wasn't.
She wasn't,
But
that's
she
right.
captivated the audience, right?
Yeah.
She was the story of the year. And I think that you look at 2024, the story of the year from a singular horse perspective is no doubt Thorpedo Anna.
I think part of it too, it's a year-long campaign. Part of it is about consistency. You're voting and you're looking at the grade ones and the tallies, but you're looking at a body of work. And Fierceness had his moments where he really didn't show up, and that's hard to support as a horse of the year for his entire campaign when she showed up every time.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I look at consistency. To your point with Zenyatta getting Horse of the Year when she got beaten, that only enhances the case for Thorpedo Anna, I think. For me, she gets my vote, and I get to vote.
Thank you for letting us know that. And we will actually be there for the Eclipse Awards, so you'll see those announcements live on FanDuel TV. All right, so the year that was, nice to bask in some of these memories, but what are we looking forward to in 2025? You guys have your travel schedules. Is there one destination point on the travel schedule that you can't wait for?
Well, Royal Ascot's the obvious one.
Yeah.
But I love going back to Oaklawn, and we get a chance to go to Oaklawn.
Yeah, I haven't been to
there?
Oaklawn in 20 years. Not since Azari, sorry about this. Ended up winning her 3rd consecutive Apple Blossom.
Right.
Have I been, and I think that was around 2003, it was Ken McPeek, Take Charge Lady, that she had to desperately catch. I'm looking forward to going to Oaklawn Park with you. I'm going to be there. Where are some of your destination points?
I'll be at Oaklawn with Simon.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to traveling with my brother-in-law because, living in the same neighborhood, we don't really get to see each other enough. We can carpool from the airport to Oaklawn.
Let's go to Arkansas together.
Yeah. Good.
The one I'm looking forward to this year that I know Churchill Downs is putting a lot of emphasis on, 50-point race. It's a new one.
Oh, Colonial.
Colonial.
Wow,
yeah.
that's
Virginia
right.
in March.
Yeah.
Bring the jackets. It's going to be nice, but they're going to put a lot of focus on that as a Derby prep. They're moving the Virginia Derby from the turf in August to dirt in March.
Christina, where are you going to be going this year that you're really, really looking forward to?
Well, I would second Oaklawn. Oaklawn's one of my favorite places to go. I love going anywhere where the community embraces the racing so much, and that's what I think is really special about Oaklawn. I love Pegasus. I'm going back for Pegasus again this year, and I was really excited by what First did with the first California Crown. And so into the second, it's not necessarily a destination, it is home, but I'm really looking forward to the second edition of the California Crown.
Well, wherever I go, I know I'm in for an adventure if I'm by any of your sides. I appreciate you so much being part of this team, and we appreciate you for supporting us throughout the year. We hope you enjoyed this look back at the year that was in horse racing 2024, and we hope you'll join us for the adventures ahead in 2025.